Jesus was probably gay, according to Anglican priest Paul Oestreicher. He's also a journalist, an expert on human rights, peace, faith, and society. He worked for political prisoners in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, in South Africa during apartheid. He also wrote a piece in The Guardian 2 days ago that is very, very controversial, saying he believes Jesus was probably a gay man. Let's go through the argument put forth by Anglican priest Paul Oestreicher. He says, 3 women, but only 1 man had the courage to go with Jesus to his execution. That man clearly had a unique place in the affection of Jesus. In all classic depictions of the Last Supper, a favorite subject of Christian art, John is next to Jesus, very often with his head resting on Jesus's breast. Dying, Jesus asks John to look after his mother and asks his mother to accept John as her son. John takes Mary home. John becomes unmistakably part of Jesus's family. Next piece of evidence cited by Anglican priest Paul Oestreicher. Jesus was a Hebrew rabbi. Unusually, he was unmarried. The idea that he had a romantic relationship with Mary Magdalene is the stuff of fiction based on no biblical evidence. The evidence, on the other hand, that he may have been what we today call gay is very strong. After much reflection and with certainly no wish to shock, I felt I was left with no option but to suggest, for the first time in half a century of my Anglican priesthood, that Jesus may well have been homosexual. Had he been devoid of sexuality, he would not have been truly human. To believe that would be heretical. And he goes on to say, heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual. Jesus could have been any of these. There can be no certainty which. The homosexual option does seem the most likely. The intimate relationship with the beloved disciple points in that direction. It would be so interpreted in any person today. Although there is no rabbinic tradition of celibacy, Jesus could well have chosen to refrain from sexual activity, whether he was gay or not. Now, I understand, Lewis, that if you don't buy into these biblical texts at all, this is, of course, completely meaningless. That's why this should be of interest to those who do believe the biblical texts, as does Anglican priest Paul Oestreicher. The reaction from many believers is to be incredibly offended. Of course, as we've explored on this program, if people are incredibly offended by ideas or suggestions, it means that those ideas are definitely worth exploring.
Yeah, it's funny when you're talking to people about Jesus, this never really comes up. Jesus' sexuality just never really is brought into the conversation. But I guess considering the religion and the context, they don't really like to talk about that at all unless they're talking about when it's a sin.
Well, that's exactly the point. Anglican priest Paul Oestreicher goes on to say, whether Jesus was gay or straight in no way affects who he was and what he means for the world today. Spirituality is immaterial. What matters in this context is that there are many gay and lesbian followers of Jesus, ordained and lay, who, despite the church, remarkably and humbly remain its faithful members. Would the Christian churches in their many guises more openly accept, embrace, and love them, there would be many more disciples. You would think Christians would realize, if they were more open to the LGBT community, that they would probably be a stronger community.
Well, when their priests and pastors are telling them that this stuff is an abomination, well, I don't think they're going to be too accepting.
We are member supported, and there's a whole other show that we do just for our supporters. Get all of those member benefits right now by going to davidpakman.com.